Amazing Love Revealed. A wealthy widower's hidden fortune and the one woman who loved him truly. Henry Lawson stared through the expansive windows of his Maplewood estate, the sunlight barely illuminating the corners of his heart that felt perpetually dim. The grand halls felt like tombs, echoing memories of laughter and love that had once filled them with life. Elizabeth's absence had hollowed the very essence of the luxurious space he managed to maintain. Outside, the picturesque town thrived as he remained shackled within these opulent walls. The scent of fresh flowers from the garden grazed his senses, yet they went unnoticed, lost in the fog of grief. His manufacturing business thrived, but it felt less like a triumph and more like a noose tightening around the neck of his sorrow. With each day, he toiled harder to preserve their legacy, only to find the core of his existence fraying under the weight of loneliness. For Henry, every board meeting became a battle. The lavish conference room, with its air of exclusivity, echoed with voices discussing profits, expansion, and market shares, while his mind was captivated by the ghost of Elizabeth's infectious enthusiasm. Would she be proud, or did his relentless drive seem like a cruel parody of their dreams? A knot tightened in his stomach. He was desperate to fill the void within, yet afraid that all he could offer Sarah Thompson was shadows and remnants of a better past. She, with her hopeful laughter and the ability to ignite even the most reluctant soul, felt like a flicker of warmth in his wintry existence. But as she buzzed around the room filled with parents and teachers during the school charity event, his wolves of fear howled louder. What if she only saw him as a wealthy widower, a figure draped in riches far removed from the sad man he felt inside? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Their exchanges grew from polite conversation into moments laced with lingering glances, shared laughter, and a magnetic connection he hadn't felt in years. Yet shadows danced in the corners of his mind. What if she discovers the truth about his family's newfound fortune, an unexpected inheritance that stemmed from dark roots? The weight of that knowledge bore down on him, casting clouds over their closeness. What would Sarah think if she learned that their connection was tangled, not just with fleeting romance, but with familial shame? The prospect of losing her gnawed at him, welling up pangs of desperation and betrayal that mingled awkwardly with desire. Just as Henry kissed the precipice of resolution, finding lightness in the moments they shared, the painful past clawed back into focus. A dark family secret emerged, one suggesting centuries of stolen wealth. His pulse quickened. This was not merely a dilemma of finances. Unearthing this history threatened to shatter the fragile walls he had constructed against the gales of his own heart. Henry wrestled within. If he chose to divulge the truth, would Sarah's trust evaporate, just like Elizabeth's laughter, leaving him hollow once more? As agony overwhelmed him, he felt the fragile cords of hope flickering, entwined yet bound by regret. Here, at the edge of emotional upheaval, Henry found himself on shaking ground, rife with indecision and spiraling fervor. Should he chase the possibilities of love and honesty, or remain lost in the shadows of his past? As the winds of fate whispered promises of revelation, he stood teetering, caught between the echoes of Elizabeth's love and a desire for a future carved anew, a future with Sarah, if only he could break free from the shackles of his legacy. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, painting soft golden streaks across his elegantly furnished bedroom. Henry stirred, his mind still clouded with the tumult of thoughts that had kept him awake through the night. Resolved to confront his demons, he slipped from under the covers and dressed with purpose. Today he would face the truth, and perhaps, for once, seize control of his narrative, his legacy. At the breakfast table, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the cinnamon-infused muffins that Mrs. Henderson had prepared. Each bite was comforting, yet served only to remind him of the emptiness that filled the void left by Elizabeth. He pushed the plate away, unable to find solace in food. Instead, his thoughts churned with the weight of pending decisions, feeling as if they were coiling around his chest. He needed clarity. The office awaited him, a modern fortress built upon the foundation of his family's legacy. As he entered, the familiarity of the space washed over him, yet it felt stifling rather than welcoming. Surrounded by accolades and financial reports, the concerns of the business felt trivial against the gravity of his personal turmoil. He summoned his executive team, seeking a distraction more from decisions. Their chatter, a backdrop as he lost himself in contemplation of how Sarah might perceive the man behind the curtain. "Henry!" Jim, his CFO, called out, snapping him back to the present. "We need to discuss the new expansion plan. It's a solid opportunity." Jim's persuasive tone could usually excite Henry, but not now, as he struggled beneath the impulse to pull away from everything that defined his outward identity. "I'll review the numbers. Just give me a moment," Henry muttered, his mind already half immersed in thoughts of Sarah. The way she lit up when speaking about her passions danced through his mind, extinguishing any flickers of ambition he once held dear. It was then that he understood the true nature of his feelings for her. This wasn't merely a flutter, it was an awakening. If he cherished the moments they had shared, the laughter and warmth, how could he bury the truth that gnawed at his conscience? He needed to learn to be vulnerable, unshackled from both grief and guilt, if he hoped to allow her into his life. As he paced through the expansive corridor of his office, an impulsive decision took root. He grabbed his coat, startling a few of his employees as he brushed past them without a word. He knew where he had to go. The realization that hiding away was no longer an option ignited a fire within him. He dialed Sarah's number, an act both daring and necessary. The phone rang, his heart racing with each chime, but inwardly he felt a growing sense of purpose. Their conversation began unremarkable, filled with pleasantries, but Henry's mind was roiling with the heat of his decision. Beneath the surface, both excitement and dread swirled as he proposed to meet for coffee. It was during that moment, as she agreed with enthusiasm, that he felt a surge of hope. He could no longer let the legacy overshadow him. It was time to reclaim his story. Yet as he hung up, doubt flickered at the edges of his mind. Was this truly the right path? Henry wrestled with the uneasy feeling. Would he be strong enough to confront both the truths of his past and the possibility of a future with Sarah? The foundation he imagined building alongside her felt vulnerable, like a house of cards precariously assembled atop shifting sands. As he stood in his office, teetering between hesitation and resolve, he drew a slow breath. The moment of truth was inching closer. Today could either seal the beginning of a beautiful chapter or plunge him back into solitude. He felt the weight of his legacy heavier now than ever. With a determination that coursed through his veins, he stepped out of the office, ready to face both Sarah and the truth that had loomed overhead for far too long. This was not just about love anymore. This was about the man he could become, one built not only on withstanding loss, but thriving in honesty. Was he prepared for the consequences of unveiling the history behind his fortune and the heart that beat beneath it? The time had come to confront not only the ghosts of his past, but also the brighter possibilities for his present and future. Would he emerge unscathed, or would the shadows that had followed him threaten to pull him under once more? Henry walked briskly through the bustling streets, the city around him a blur of color and noise, each honk and shout a reminder of the life he had carefully curated. A part of him, however, felt detached, like an observer in his own story. As he made his way to the cafe, the anticipation of meeting Sarah built within him, intertwined with a fear that felt almost paralyzing. What if she saw through his facade? What if, in their conversation, the weight of his past became unbearable, rendering him unable to engage in the simplicity of companionship? At the cafe, the air was thick with the scent of roasted coffee and freshly baked pastries. The lively chatter and clinking of cups created a warm ambiance, yet Henry felt like an interloper in a realm of normalcy. He spotted Sarah seated by a window, her face illuminated by the soft sunlight streaming in. Her smile, genuine and welcoming, sent a rush of warmth through him, but uncertainty quickly crept back in. "Hey, I hope I didn't keep you waiting," he said, forcing a smile as he approached the table. She looked up, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of curiosity and affection. "Not at all. I arrived just a few minutes ago." They exchanged pleasantries, but Henry struggled to shake the cloud of introspection that had shadowed him. As they sat, he feigned interest in the items on the menu, all the while grappling internally with the pressing need to be open about his past. The wisdom he had gleaned from the previous night's revelations clamored within him. If he wanted to build something real, he had to confront the fear that kept him shackled to his legacy of sadness. "What's on your mind?" Sarah asked, breaking through his reverie with an earnestness that both soothed and intimidated him. He realized then that this was a crucial moment, one that could define their relationship. The urge to keep his life's narrative wrapped in secrecy warred against the desire to truly connect. Honestly, I've been thinking a lot about my past, he admitted, meeting her gaze. About Elizabeth and how it shaped who I am today? A delicate silence fell between them as her expression shifted to one of understanding rather than pity. You loved her deeply, didn't you? Her question hung in the air, the weight of it pulling him deeper into his own thoughts. He nodded slowly, feeling as though a dam had cracked open. I did. But that love is just a part of me now, a chapter. And I've been holding on to it because I was afraid, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Afraid of what? Sarah asked gently. Afraid of moving forward. Afraid that I wouldn't know how, or even deserve to find happiness again, with you. The confession tumbled from his lips, raw and unfiltered. As he spoke, he felt a surprising lightness, as if each word was a weight lifted from his shoulders. Sarah listened intently, her eyes reflecting compassion and strength. You deserve to be happy, Henry, she said softly. We all have histories, but they don't have to dictate our future. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means living for today. Her words struck a chord deep within him, resonating louder than he expected. He was standing at a crossroads, poised to take a step forward into a future that shimmered with promise and uncertainty. The conversation flowed more freely after that, as they shared laughs and stories, vulnerabilities colliding with shared dreams. Each moment with Sarah peeled away another layer of the guarded exterior he had put on for so long. Yet despite this newfound connection, a lingering doubt loomed at the edge of his consciousness. Could he truly embrace a new love without turning back to the safety of his past? As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the cafe, Henry felt the familiar grip of anxiety tighten within him. Was he ready to acknowledge the possibility of love once more? With every laugh they shared and every glance they exchanged, he felt the walls around his heart begin to tremble, yet the fear of losing what he had finally let in loomed large. As he prepared to leave, he caught her eyes again, searching for a flicker of truth in her gaze. Sarah, But before he could finish, the cafe door swung open, and in walked a figure from his past, someone whose presence could shatter everything he had begun to build. The moment Henry caught sight of the figure stepping through the cafe door, time seemed to stall. Every ounce of warmth he had been rediscovering evaporated, replaced by a chilling wave of dread. It was Thomas, Elizabeth's brother, a man he hadn't expected to see again. Not here, not now. His presence felt like an uninvited storm cloud, dark and looming over the fragile connection he had begun to forge with Sarah. What is he doing here? Henry's thoughts raced. The memories of their last encounter rushed back to him, a festering wound of unresolved tension and guilt. Henry? Sarah's voice broke through the haze, a gentle prodding. Are you okay? The question sparked a moment of clarity. Henry realized that for once, it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Sarah, too. But how could he involve her in this fractured part of his life? He took a steadying breath, trying to navigate the tumult within him. I'm sorry, he said, his eyes locked on Thomas, who was scanning the room, evidently seeking someone. I need a minute. He pushed back from the table, urgency propelling him toward the exit as he moved to intercept Thomas. Confrontation was not Henry's default, yet this was different. This wasn't just about his past. It was about protecting what he felt could be a tender future. Henry, Thomas spotted him, a small, curious smile creeping onto his face. Long time, no see. Yeah, you could say that, Henry replied, forcing the words through clenched teeth. What are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood, Thomas answered casually. Came in for a quick coffee. Didn't expect to run into you, not after everything? The weight of Thomas's words hit harder than intended. Everything. It was a blunt reminder of the loss. What do you want, Thomas? I wanted to talk, he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. About Elizabeth. Henry took a step back, instinctively wanting to put distance between them. There's nothing left to say. Isn't there? Thomas challenged, steel creeping into his voice. You owe it to her, to yourself, to confront the truth about how she... No. The intensity of Henry's voice startled them both. You don't get to decide what I owe anyone, Thomas. I've been doing my best to move on. I'm trying to live, not just survive. The fire coursed through him, fighting against the very foundations of his grief. The brief silence that ensued was heavy. Thomas worked his jaw, the fight in him dissolving momentarily. I didn't come here to fight, Henry. I came because there's something you should know. What could you possibly say that would change anything? About Elizabeth and her will. Henry's heart raced. The prospect of discussing Elizabeth's will was something he had buried deep beneath the layers of his sorrow, but curiosity and a flicker of dread ignited within him. You remember the trust she set up? Thomas continued, his tone low and almost conspiratorial. There might be more there than you think. It wasn't just for her family. What do you mean? Henry's voice had dropped to a whisper, a chill threading through him. I can't discuss it here, but I think it's time you knew the whole story. What if there was something she wanted you to have? Thomas's eyes searched Henry's, a hidden intensity flickering between them. Before Henry could respond, the cafe door swung open once more, and Sarah appeared, her expression filled with concern and confusion. Henry, is everything all right? Her question hung in the air, palpable tension enveloping them anew. Henry faced her, battling between the past that was pulling on him and the uncertain yet shining possibilities ahead. He felt the walls he had begun to dismantle tightening around him again. Would he step back into the shadows of his past with Thomas, or would he embrace the new path that beckoned from Sarah's inviting gaze? Everything's about to change, he thought, standing at yet another crossroads. He turned towards Sarah, determination rising within him. But what he didn't know yet was if he had the courage to follow through, or if the weight of his past would hold him back once more. The decision loomed large, and the moment of truth was near. Henry stood frozen for a moment, emotions crashing like waves within him. Uncertainty flowed through him, battling with a burgeoning sense of agency. Sarah's presence illuminated something within him, a desire to reclaim his narrative. But the specter of Elizabeth customized his path into a twisted maze of guilt and obligation. Henry? Sarah's voice was soft, but the strength of her inquiry penetrated through his haze. What's going on? His eyes flitted back and forth between Sarah and Thomas, a fierce duality simmering just beneath the surface. Thomas's intention lingered like a weight, overshadowing the possibilities he saw in Sarah. I'll be right back, Henry said, the determination in his voice poignant. He turned to Sarah, allowing a quick glance that implored her to trust him, to understand that this was a necessary stop on his journey. Martin advanced toward Thomas, the ambiguity in their history swirling with the urgency of the present. Let's talk, he said coolly, leading the way outside. Outside, the sun felt unusually harsh, but Henry's heart thudded with a mix of heat and adrenaline. What's this about a will? He demanded, his voice steady, yet laced with underlying tension. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to the ground before locking onto Henry's gaze with renewed intensity. Elizabeth had plans, Henry. Plans you might not have been aware of. When she passed, there was a trust. You were named in it. The words hung heavily in the air, feeling almost tangible between them. Henry's pulse quickened, a duality of hope and dread taking root. What kind of plans? There were assets tied to her photography, royalties she intended you to benefit from. It wasn't just for her family. Emotions flooded Henry, a strange cocktail of nostalgia, resentment, and a glimmer of unexpected optimism. He thought about the countless hours Elizabeth had poured into her work, the passion lighting up her eyes as she shared her vision. Yet all of that blended with the anguish of loss. Claiming anything felt like a betrayal. Why are you bringing this up now, Thomas? Because it's what she would have wanted, Thomas reiterated, softness creeping into his eyes. You're part of this, Henry. It's time to stop avoiding the truth. You owe it to her, and you owe it to yourself. Henry's heart raced, but underneath the anger at Thomas for encroaching on the remnants of his grief lay a burgeoning sense of responsibility. Was it really about Elizabeth's legacy, or was it about finally releasing himself from the guilt that had clung to him like a shroud? Would accepting this be a betrayal or an honoring of her wishes? I need time to think, Henry said, struggling to untangle the threads of obligation and aspiration. Fine, just know, Thomas paused, his voice low but firm, that avoiding this won't make it go away. You can't run forever, Henry. You still carry her memory. Henry nodded, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. Yet as he turned around to confront the pressing weight of his decisions, he felt an urge for clarity, a yearning to sift through the chaos surrounding his choices. Could he step bravely into this potential awakening with Sarah? As he re-entered the cafe, the atmosphere shifted, the internal turmoil echoing within him. He spotted Sarah still seated at their table, her eyes wide with concern, worry etched in her brow. "Henry, what happened?" she asked, reaching for his hand instinctively. With a deep breath, he realized it was time to share everything. The complex truth of Elizabeth's past, the unexpected legacy awaiting him, and the hesitations that had haunted him too long. "I need to tell you something," he began, uncertainty blending with resolve as he prepared to navigate the murky waters of his past and align them with the budding potential of a future with Sarah. In that moment, the air crackled with tension, the fear of his impending revelation mingling with the flicker of hope igniting within him. As he spoke, Henry sensed the enormity of what lay ahead. The trust, his connection with Elizabeth, could shape everything. What was at stake? Would Sarah understand the depths of his loyalty to a memory while still nurturing a new bond? But before he could finish, another figure emerged from the shadows of the cafe, a familiar face that threatened to upend everything he had just begun to face. Henry's thoughts tightened as he struggled to form the words that would guide him forward, caught once again at the intersection of his past and an uncertain future. The moment was heading toward an unexpected climax, and Henry braced himself for the impact that would surely come. Henry's breath caught as the familiar figure stepped further into the dim light of the cafe. It was Julia, a mutual friend whose presence had layered his past with both warmth and unresolved tension. The surprise in her eyes was quickly replaced with a guarded expression, as if she had stumbled into a moment that wasn't meant for her. "Henry," she said, her voice crisp yet considerate, "I didn't realize you'd be here." "Julia," he responded, forcing his mind away from the weight of the conversation he had just begun with Sarah. The gravity of his thoughts threatened to drag him down, yet he couldn't ignore the feeling that this meeting would challenge him further. "I was just talking to Sarah about Elizabeth," he managed to say, instinctively glancing at Sarah, who watched the exchange with a mix of curiosity and concern. "About her will?" Julia's question was sharp, probing. "I heard about that. A lot of us did. Are you going to take what's offered?" The question loomed in the air, causing Henry's stomach to churn. "I'm still figuring it out," he replied, his tone more tentative than he intended. Memories of Elizabeth flooded back, her laughter, her sharp creative insight, and the love she always seemed to give freely, despite their complicated history. "You really can't ignore this, Henry," Julia pressed, her eyes locking onto his. "This isn't just about money. It's about validation, closure. It's about finally stepping out of the shadows." He flinched at the implications in her words. "I'm not avoiding anything," he said more forcefully than necessary, but doubt crept in. Was he really ready to confront the ramifications of claiming Elizabeth's legacy, or was he still hiding behind the veil of grief? "Then why are you still holding back? Why not embrace what she left you?" Julia pressed on, her intensity matching his internal turmoil. Henry glanced at Sarah, who was observing him with an expression that was both encouraging and filled with concern. It's complicated," he admitted, the weight of his past now a tangible entity pressing against him. "Complicated? Elizabeth wouldn't have wanted you to feel that way?" Julia's voice softened, transforming her ultimatum into something more empathetic. "She believed in you, Henry. You were her muse. This isn't just a trust. It's an opportunity for you to evolve, to rekindle what you love." His mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Could her faith in him lead him to a clearer path? And what would it mean to pursue this legacy while forming new connections with Sarah? "I don't know if I can do that," Henry managed to say, vulnerability dripping from his words. "I don't want to betray Elizabeth and simultaneously weigh myself further down with guilt. It feels like I'm stuck." "Stuck is where many remain, Henry," Julia interjected, her voice a steady reminder of truth. "But you have a choice. Embrace this challenge or let it be a chain, binding you to the past." As she stepped back slightly, the air crackled with the possibilities of what lay ahead, not just in his relationship with Elizabeth's memory, but in allowing himself the chance to breathe new life into his future. "Julia, he began, but she cut him off. "It's not about needing to have everything figured out right now. Just know, whatever you choose, I'm here for you." In that moment, Henry felt a surge of courage, a flicker of the agency he had long denied himself. As Julia turned to leave, he called out after her. "Can we talk more about this later?" "Anytime," she called back, a small smile crossing her lips as she exited the cafe. Turning back to Sarah, he noticed her expectant expression. "I need to be honest about everything," Henry said, the pieces of his past swirling together into a mosaic of opportunity and risk. "It's going to be complicated, but it's time I share it with you." As he began to uncover the reality of his connection to Elizabeth, the ambiance of the cafe transformed into something akin to a sanctuary for reconciliation. Yet, beneath the surface, doubts over his capacity to embrace this new chapter still loomed, setting the stage for a confrontation that would dictate the course of his future. Outside the cafe, shadows deepened, and the lingering question hung heavy in the air. Could he reconcile his old life with the promise of something new, or would embracing his past shackle him to old burdens? The clock was ticking, and Henry could sense the moment of truth drawing ever closer. Henry took a deep breath, grounding himself as Sarah's gaze intensified, urging him to open up. The weight of his unresolved feelings and decisions about Elizabeth pressed against him, coiling tighter with each passing second. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in the cafe window, a man etched in hesitation and uncertainty. "I've put off talking about Elizabeth for long enough," he began, the words catching in his throat. "Our relationship was, well, it was complicated, but I need to confront that now, especially if it may affect what she's left behind." A flicker of understanding ignited in Sarah's eyes. She shifted closer, embodying a supportive energy that he desperately craved. "You don't have to carry all that alone," she said softly. "You can share whatever you want. I'm here." He hesitated, contemplating how much to reveal. The raw reality of Elizabeth's influence on his life entangled with the promise of Sarah's presence. The emotional landscape of their dynamics loomed heavy, yet now it beckoned for exploration. "Elizabeth," he began slowly, tracing the contours of their shared history in his mind. "She pushed me creatively, but also reflected all my insecurities back at me. Being with her felt like standing at the edge of a cliff where I had the chance to soar or plummet." A small smile played on Sarah's lips, perhaps reflecting both encouragement and empathy. "It sounds like she believed in your potential, but the weight of that belief was too heavy at times." "Exactly," he nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been avoiding my feelings about her, like letting go of that fear would mean losing a part of myself. But I think Julia was right. If I don't confront this, I'll be tethered to the past." The honesty spilled from him like ink from a pen, staining the air with revelations. "Claiming her legacy feels like accepting a part of me that I've kept hidden. It's daunting to think of stepping into the light, but I realize that's what she would have wanted." As he spoke, a realization struck him. Fear was holding him captive. It wasn't merely about Elizabeth. It was about his own capability to move forward. He desperately wanted to honor her memory, but that meant embracing his own desires as well, possibly with Sarah by his side. "Have you thought about what pursuing that legacy could look like?" Sarah asked, her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "I don't know," he admitted. "I picture myself rekindling my writing, but then flinch at the thought of accepting her gift openly. What if it's not enough? What if I fail? I don't want to shatter the memory of our relationship by revealing how deep the shadows go." Her brow furrowed as she considered his words. "What if embracing her memory allows you to grow? You often talk about wanting to live authentically. Maybe pursuing this is part of that journey. You have that spirit in you." His heart quickened. Could Sarah see the potential in him, the parts he still struggled to accept? Doubt still loomed, yet he felt emboldened. "Perhaps I've held back from even exploring what I'm capable of achieving," he mused. "The thought that I could turn Elizabeth's legacy into something meaningful, it excites me and terrifies me simultaneously." Sarah reached across the table, her hand brushing against his. "You deserve to find that balance, Henry. It won't be easy, but it's your journey now." As they sat in the cafe, a spark ignited within him, urging him to tackle his fears head-on, to see his past, not as chains, but as a stepping stone. Earlier confessions still hovered like clouds overhead, manifesting a possibility he had nearly silenced. "Maybe I'll take that first step. Talk it out with someone who knew her well. Julia, perhaps," he said, contemplating the suggestion. "I need to see this through, to write again, to reclaim my voice, and maybe find out what I deeply care about along the way. A smile broke across Sarah's face, a glimmer of hope shared between them. The shadows seemed to dissipate, if only for a moment. He could feel the pathways of change opening up before him. Yet lingering uncertainty clawed at his resolve. The decision to pursue Elizabeth's legacy meant stepping into a world filled with both danger and promise. "Tomorrow, I'll talk to Julia about everything," he declared, a sense of determination strengthening within him. But in that moment, he also recognized the vast tapestry of emotions waiting to unravel, the confrontation looming in the future that would define not only how he remembered Elizabeth, but how he allowed her memory to shape his next steps. And as he clung to that whirlwind of ambition and anxiety, the clock ticked loudly in his mind, whispering the urgency of choice. Would he sacrifice his fears at the altar of progress, or would the shadows guard his heart too fiercely? In the gathering dusk outside, the sky mirrored his inner conflict, brilliant hues of orange battling against encroaching darkness. The time had come to embrace his past, or risk allowing it to bind him forever to an unfulfilled destiny. The next morning, an undercurrent of tension gripped Henry as he prepared to meet Julia. Facing his past, especially the memories of Elizabeth, felt like stepping onto a battlefield, each step fraught with risks and potential wounds. He glanced at himself in the mirror, noticing how the lines of uncertainty still marked his face. Doubts shadowed his resolve, taunting him to retreat into the safer, more familiar confines of avoidance. Yet, as Sarah had pointed out, success lay in embracing the journey ahead, not hiding along the sidelines. Gathering a deep breath, he reminded himself of his commitment. This needed to happen. Renowned as a crucial figure in Elizabeth's life, Julia would hold insights he desperately required. Arriving at the small cafe where they planned to meet, the familiar aroma of coffee and baked goods enveloped him. With each step forward, he felt both the weight of expectation and the inklings of determination coiling tighter around him. Julia was already seated, her fingers tracing lightly over a book of poetry as he approached. Her seat at the sun-drenched window seemed a stark contrast to his internal shadow. "Henry," she greeted warmly, her blue eyes sparkling with recognition. "It's good to see you." "Hey, Julia," he answered, his voice steadier than he felt. As he settled into the chair opposite her, he wrestled with the words he wanted to articulate, unsure if they would emerge with clarity. "Thanks for meeting me on such short notice." "Of course. Is everything all right?" Her expression, filled with concern and curiosity, invited him to disclose whatever burdens had drawn him in. He hesitated, measuring her reaction. The truth hung heavily in the air between them, but he had to take the plunge. "I've been reflecting a lot on Elizabeth and what her legacy means for me. I think it's time to confront my feelings about our relationship and what it could inspire moving forward." Julia nodded knowingly, setting aside her book. "Her impact on your life was profound. It's common to feel a mix of gratitude and grief. What specifically are you struggling with?" Just saying it out loud felt brave. "I've harnessed this fear of embracing her memory, of stepping into what she believed in." He paused, expecting to feel a wave of vulnerability, but instead met it with a determined calm. "I want to honor her through my writing, but I am terrified it won't live up to her vision." Julia's gaze softened. "Do you know what her vision was for you? Or what she believed in?" The question launched a ripple of reflection within him. "She saw my potential, encouraged my creativity. But there were times when her expectations felt suffocating, and I recoiled instead of rising to meet them. I've been hiding, Julia, from both her expectations and my own ambition. I need to understand that better." Claiming her legacy isn't about becoming someone else. It's about allowing yourself to transform through her memory, Julia encouraged, her voice measured. "Writing isn't merely a duty, it's a vessel for exploration. What about Elizabeth's life inspired you the most?" Henry had to close his eyes briefly, allowing memories of laughter and late-night conversations to wash over him. Her resilience, despite everything, she pursued her passions fiercely. I admired that drive, how she lived with intention. I want to channel that energy into my own work. "Then stop carrying the weight like a burden," she advised. "Use it as fuel. Infuse your heart and voice in that space." Would writing about her story bring clarity? A flame ignited within him, igniting a clarity he hadn't anticipated. "Yes, I think exploring our experiences might unravel the shackles I've placed on my creativity." "Then write," Julia urged, leaning forward, a relentless spark in her eyes. Every word will be a step toward accepting not only her memory but your own desires. Let that be your path forward. Henry felt a rush of determination surge through him, emboldened by Julia's encouragement. Taking his phone, he jotted down a quick note. Elizabeth's story is boundless. It's time to lift the veil. The decision, once an encumbrance, now felt like an opening. But as they discussed ideas and themes, a small voice nagged at him. What if he failed to deliver a tribute worthy of her? The anxiety fluttered like moths in his stomach, whispering doubts as he worked through the resources and networks he could explore. As the lunch hour faded into afternoon, Henry realized he was on the precipice of a new direction, a journey intertwining ambition, fear, and the remembrance of love. Next steps? Julia inquired, breaking through the knot of his thoughts. I'll draft an outline and start pulling my ideas together openly, Henry replied, excitement mingled with apprehension skimming his voice. There's a festival later this month where submissions are welcomed. I might even share pieces of her poetry alongside my experiences. Then you have your path, she affirmed, a proud smile crossing her lips. The shadows may always linger, but your journey is yours to craft. As he stood to leave, ready to embark on this new chapter, a revelation struck him. He would not only explore Elizabeth's legacy, but rediscover his own voice in the process. Yet, as he stepped back into the world, the imminent reality loomed before him. The possibility of failure in conveying such deep feelings, and the anxiety of acceptance from those who had loved Elizabeth. The clock was ticking. Would the words flow freely, or would he succumb to the doubts that he needed to conquer? Determination met his fears with a clash that echoed within him as he prepared for the first stride into his unapologetic future. What would emerge as he began to weave these stories together? And would the past finally unshackle him or close in around him again? Henry stepped into the afternoon sun, the warmth contrasting with the whirlwind of thought swirling inside him. The cafe's wooden door snapped shut behind him, shutting off the safety and satisfaction he had felt just moments ago. Outside, he felt the weight of the world squarely back on his shoulders, each pedestrian a reminder of the life ahead of him, filled with challenges and uncertainties. Despite the clarity Julia had provided, doubt clung to him like lingering smoke from an extinguished flame. He had spoken boldly about Elizabeth's legacy and his passion for honoring her memory through writing, yet the specter of inadequacy cast a long shadow. As he walked, the vibrant urban landscape seemed both inviting and menacing. Buildings towered over him, each window a reflection of lives being lived boldly, a stark reminder of what he felt he had yet to achieve. He spotted a small park and decided to sit on a bench beneath a sprawling oak tree, its leaves dancing gently in the breeze. Perhaps he could regain composure here, shake off the anxiety that had begun to settle heavy in his chest. Pulling out his notebook, Henry opened to a blank page. The pristine lines stared back at him, mocking in their emptiness. This space was meant for exploration, yet the words seemed to elude him, retreating deeper into the shadows of his mind. Frustration gnawed at him. Who did he think he was? Could he really distill Elizabeth's essence into mere words? With each stroke of his pen, he wrote Elizabeth, then scratched it out. Her resilience. No, my struggles. Another deep breath, but the clutter of conflicting emotions took shape, a dance of inspiration and trepidation. He started again, writing, I am Henry, not Elizabeth's shadow. For the first time, he acknowledged that the fear he had carried also stemmed from the insecurities he lacked in his relationship with Elizabeth. It wasn't merely about her legacy, but his own identity and ambition that felt crammed into a small box labeled grief. That box was not only hindering his creativity, it was imprisoning him, binding him to a painful past. In that moment of realization, clarity struck anew. He wasn't just a surrogate vessel for Elizabeth's legacy, he was a living entity capable of crafting his narrative, his successes, failures, and growth intertwined with her story. Accepting this newfound perspective felt like smashing through a glass ceiling he had inadvertently constructed. With growing fervor, he scribbled thoughts that reminded him of Elizabeth's laugh, her passion for the written word, and the dreams they had shared. The emergence of these memories imbued him with strength. He felt the whisper of her pride echoing in his mind. Write, Henry. Show the world who you are. As dusk approached, he turned the page in his notebook and began to outline the texture of their shared experiences, each bullet point a stepping stone toward his ultimate goal, authenticity. But the rush of clarity was abruptly interrupted when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Julia. "Just wanted to check in. How are you feeling?" The warmth of her concern settled over him like a comforting blanket. It reminded him that he wouldn't have to navigate this journey alone. Julia's trust in his capabilities felt like an anchor. He smiled. Perhaps this wasn't just about him confronting his past, it was also about building connections in the present. He crafted a quick response, then hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Should he share the breakthroughs, the clarity that had started to seep through the cracks of his identity? The thought of vulnerability washed over him like a wave. But wasn't this the essence of writing? To expose one's truth amidst the fear of judgment? With a deep breath, he typed a simple message. "I'm starting to see things more clearly. I think I can do this." As he pressed send, a strange mix of excitement and fear coursed through his veins. What if this moment was a pivot point where everything changed? With renewed determination, Henry collected his belongings and stood up, ready to face whatever lay ahead. He sensed that a richer exploration awaited, not only of Elizabeth's enduring influence on his life, but also of the possibilities of his own emerging voice. As he headed home, an unsettling thought began to surface. What if Julia's support opened doors he wasn't prepared to walk through? The weight of change loomed ahead, and while he craved growth, he had to confront the inevitable challenges that came with it. Would he be ready to embrace a life less confined by his fears? Or would he falter in the face of opportunity? The answers awaited him on the path he was beginning to forge. A week passed, and Henry found himself nestled in a comfortable routine. Each day he dedicated time to writing, poring over memories of Elizabeth and weaving them into a tapestry of resilience, love, and ambition. Yet the weight of uncertainty still loomed, sometimes casting shadows over his progress. On one particular afternoon, the scent of coffee filled his study, intermingling with the soft hum of music in the background. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the clutter of papers filled with thoughts that he couldn't help but feel were both inspired and intimidating. The more he wrote, the more he uncovered fragments of himself he had long neglected. As he sat down with a fresh cup, his laptop open to a new document titled Legacy, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The initial fear of inadequacy was fading. He began drafting not just Elizabeth's story, but his own interwoven with it, a narrative that was becoming clearer by the day. The distinguishing factor was his voice, poignant yet undeniably authentic. One afternoon, he received a call that would shift everything further. Julia proposed a gathering. "I want you to meet a few writers I know," she said, her energy palpable through the phone. "They're keen on exploring ideas, and I think your work would be a great addition." The thought of peer interaction excited and terrified him. Who was he to join experienced writers with established reputations? But Julia's encouragement was potent. It emboldened him. "I'll do it," he found himself saying before he could overthink it. The day of the gathering arrived with a blend of anticipation and anxiety. As Henry entered the cozy, dimly lit venue, with bookshelves lining the walls and soft chatter swirling around him, he wondered if this was what it felt like to step into the light. He approached the group as Julia introduced him, her words echoing across the room, framing him as a promising voice poised for real impact. Sharing his work felt monumental. It was a validation, a way to stand tall and boast of his journey. As he spoke, his nerves transformed into conviction. The other writers listened, engaged, and challenged him with invigorating questions. In that moment, his fears dissolved, replaced by the thrill of creation and sharing. That evening marked a shift within him. A newfound confidence began to take root, its branches stretching beyond the confines of his self-doubt. Days turned into weeks. Each moment spent writing was an affirmation of his growth. With each story written, he felt Elizabeth's spirit entwined with his own. The more he embraced her memory, the more he found his voice as an artist. By the end of the month, Henry reached a poignant milestone. He submitted his first piece to a local magazine featuring emerging writers. It was a short essay encapsulating moments of joy and pain intertwined with Elizabeth's influence, reflective of his transformation and honoring her legacy. Days felt prolonged as he awaited a response. The anxiety was palpable, yet a part of him recognized it as an opportunity to fully embrace vulnerability. Finally, the call came. "Henry, it's Sam from the magazine. We loved your piece. We want to publish it next month." His heart soared. It was official. He was no longer living in the shadow of grief. He was stepping into the world as a recognized writer. In that moment of triumph, he also realized that this was not merely about the acceptance of others. It was about proving something to himself. A credibility had been established, a solid foundation on which he could build even greater ambitions. It wasn't solely about being a successful writer. It was also about the catharsis that came with acknowledging his emotions and using them as fuel. He could reflect on his past without being ensnared by it. Yet through all this success, Elizabeth never faded into the background. Instead, her presence remained a source of inspiration, guiding him as his compass in navigating this new frontier. With every published piece, Henry achieved a greater sense of closure, defining his future not just through Elizabeth's legacy, but through his own promising path. Returning home one evening after sharing drinks with Julia and other writers, he felt restful fulfillment wrap around him like a warm blanket. He stood at the window, gazing out into the twinkling lights of the city, now infused with hope. Not only had he honed his talent, but he had also carved a place for himself without losing sight of the love he once had. He picked up his phone and sent a message to Sarah. "I want to share something with you soon." With newfound confidence at his fingertips, he knew the time had come to embrace the journey further and share how her belief had fed into this transformation. The future awaited him, replete with challenges and joys, much like the stories he now penned. The darkness no longer felt suffocating. Instead, it served as context, enriching the quote he had always lived by. "Strength does not come from winning. Your struggles develop your strengths." Henry Lawson was not just a wealthy widower anymore. He was a man who had conquered his grief and emerged as a beacon of hope, not only for himself but for others who shared similar journeys of transformation and rebirth. Now, seized by purpose, he prepared to embark on the next chapter of his life, a testament to embracing who he was while honoring the past that had shaped him. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to stay connected with more exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Henry's incredible transformation. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.